Hello everybody, I'm here with Morwena Asaf. Morwena is a lifelong dancer, educator, and performer, and she's also a writer. She has dedicated a lifetime to Middle Eastern dance in all those roles, and she is going to be in Boston very soon to give us the chance to learn from her. So that's why we're here today. I'm trying to get to know her better and try to show you more about her. She was born in England, raised in Montreal in California, and eventually she got involved in dance, in different kinds of dance, until she found, I think, her love of her life, Middle Eastern dance, and she's going to tell us more about it. She studied for 25 years with the legendary Bobby Farah, Ibrahim Farah in New York, somebody who's been the teacher of stars. Today, Morwena runs her own studio. She used to be in California until recently, and now she moved to Tennessee, but before that she was a New Englander, so she was in our area. So she has a special love for the New England area where we live, and she knows a lot about us and many of us and the music scene and the dance scene here. So right now her husband, who is Lebanese and he's also a musician, he's a drummer, Walid Asaf, and her, they both traveled internationally. They've been teaching throughout the USA and in Lebanon, Mexico, Canada, and the United Kingdom. So we are lucky to have Morwena here. Hello, Morwena. I'm recording you there.
Well, I'm glad we finally got it together. Hello, and how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. This has been a little tricky, but I got you now, and we're hoping the sound is going to be good enough. So, are you ready for this?
Why not? Why not? Let's go for it.
All right. So, I had thought of some questions that maybe we all want to ask you. And
Okay.
the first thing is, how did it happen that you started getting involved with Middle Eastern dance at all?
Well, from living in the area of New Bedford in Massachusetts, where there are more Lebanese, I think, than anywhere else in the world in one place, I was invited by a friend, I was a hairdresser at the time, to go take a class. And her husband said, hell no, you're not doing belly dancing. So I said, okay, Sandy, let's go. So we went. I can't say that was a wonderful experience. The lady really didn't know anything, but she was Lebanese and she took the dance seriously. So it wasn't a flim-flam thing at all. She just didn't know a great deal. But I stayed with her about a year and then saw an ad for a belly dance class in Norwood and got in my car on a snowy day, drove out to Norwood. The class was canceled because of the snow. And thank goodness the people called me back afterwards and apologized for not being there. And I did go there. And there I met another girl who said, how would you like to study with somebody from New York? And I thought, well, you know, what a dream that would be. So I said yes, and then went down to Fall River and met a woman by the name of Dolores Escala Matson. And we became friends. Dolores is my best friend to this day. And that was, 1975 or 75, I think. And she talked me into going to New York. And that's another whole story. But that's how I started.
Very good.
It's a wonderful experience. I wouldn't change it for anything.
What did your friend's husband say after that? I got caught in that part of the story.
It's funny because they ended up getting a divorce. But he was an old country Portuguese guy who the old standards and the old fashioned, and his wife wasn't in a belly dance, and he thought I was very liberal and very outspoken, and I thought, I don't think I am, In fact, I was rather shy and retiring at that point, but it got me out of my place, and I went ahead. So it's been good. So that's how I got into belly dancing.
So Morwenna, I know that I already mentioned about Bobby Farah, and I imagine that name is gonna come up. Who else were your mentors that most influenced you?
In my dance life, I wouldn't be in this business if it wasn't for him. He took care of, all the things that happen in the through that and over it, and see the other side of the dance, which is where he was. And then there's also Elena Lentini in New York. To me, she's the ultimate artist, and she has been from day one to today. She's incredible, I think. And the other person, Mahmoud Reda. Mahmoud Reda has been a big influence, and I'm thankful that even when we brought him to Boston years ago, I continued bringing him, and he'd stay in our house, and we'd sit up half the night talking dance. That was, that is a big impression. And then the other person, Amani of Lebanon, they are the people who have been the big influence. And a lady in Lebanon called Georgette Gabara, who's actually a ballet dancer, she was the last big inspiration. Actually, they're the people who have been the most in my dance life. So I'm thankful that I've had friends, Alia Carella, Dolores Matson, all of these people all help make you who you are. And they're all great artists. Enough said on that?
Wonderful. So I noticed that you tend to gravitate towards the Lebanese styles of dancing, either Oriental dance or folklore. So we all wonder if you could tell us how come that you got so interested in Lebanese style of dance.
Well, it's a two-faced question, really, or two-sided, because Bobby was Lebanese. And so his style was basically Lebanese, even though he taught everything. And though in those days, we didn't call it Egyptian dance or Lebanese, it was Oriental, and it covered everything. And it wasn't until I went to California and people had said to me, well, are you Egyptian or Turkish? And I'd think, what? I'm neither one. And then I would stop and say, I'm Lebanese. And so then I got dubbed as a Lebanese dancer, and because most of my influence really was Lebanese. Then, of course, in Boston, as you know, the music's primarily Lebanese. And you're living in the Lebanese community. And when I was the dancer of the day in Boston, it wasn't because I was dancing to Kulthum. It was because I was dancing to the songs that they knew, that the people knew, and they loved. So it got me in favor with those people. And then, of course, I married the drummer. And I say that with tongue-in-cheek because I always tell dancers, never mess around with the musicians. All you'll get is a bad reputation. But, unless you're serious about them, And then I was lucky, and believe I have been married since 1980, and I wouldn't change a day of that. But that's my two-sided story to Bobby and Walid. And that's how I got into it. And I do prefer the Lebanese style because it's what I know so well. I see dancers today that get into Egyptian style only, and they don't have any depth. It's just lock, tuck, tuck, boom, tuck, tick, tuck, boom, tuck, boom, they don't go anywhere. And I don't like the straight-legged style. To me, that is more Latin, and it's not Middle Eastern, even though there's a a lot of that influence in the Middle East now. They don't do it in their belly dance. So why are we incorporating it into the belly dance? I don't get that. But that's why I prefer Lebanese dance. And I love the music. It's happy. Lebanese music is always happy. It makes you sing, it makes you hum, and it makes you dance. Where Egyptian music can be very straight and crisp and and it's done. And that's not what I like. I like to be happy. I like to smile. I like to laugh. So that's it.
Interesting. So you got a little bit into my next question, which is I know that I'm so happy that you're gonna come to Boston and spend a few hours with us and teach us all about the Lebanese style. So you already said a few things, but um, what else could you add to that, like to give us an idea of what you will be covering in the workshop, what we'll be learning after we attend that class? I'm
I
looking
will
forward.
be comparing the Lebanese style to the Egyptian style, so people do understand the difference. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with one style or the other, just the differences that are in the two dance styles. I will cover that. I will cover it from a perspective of folklore, because the Lebanese have their own folklore just like the Egyptians do.
Mm-hmm.
The costuming, which sometimes can cross over, but there's differences. The staging is different when you're doing Lebanese style than Egyptian style. The music can be Egyptian, as you know, because you
Yes.
work in Boston, that the musicians all play the classics. And personally, for myself, Lebanese, and this doesn't come from being in an area, and then it's what I've observed on Arabic television, but we live with it. And the musicians from Lebanon are far more accomplished than the musicians from Egypt. And that I always found kind of amazing, because I always thought Egyptian had the better musicians.
So now I would love to ask you, as you watch other performers, and you must have a favorite. So who would be the epitome of the Lebanese dancer, maybe from this day, and maybe somebody who was, earlier on famous, important dancer?
That's an easy one. My favorite all-time dancer was Nadia Gamal. And her style was Lebanese. It was
Yes.
not Egyptian. And I loved Nadia. Of course, my husband's cousin was married to her. He was the violinist who now lives in Montreal, Shafiq Hashim. He was married to her, and that might have a little bit to do with why I feel so much for her.
Mm-hmm.
But she was a beautiful dancer and such a nice person. The other person is Amani. Amani is dynamite to watch. I mean, she's just fabulous, and she's equally as nice a person as you could ever meet in this world. She's my new favorite. And then, as I mentioned before, Elena Landini I love because she's so different. And again, now Elena's style is Turkish. She's a Turkish dancer. She dances to all Turkish music. But I love what she does. She draws you into her show. She's the artist.
And you mentioned, so you had a sort of a family relation. You were sort of friends with Nadia Gamal.
Yes. Well, she was my husband's, married to my husband's cousin. And when they were kids, she used to go to his grandmother's every Sunday for dinner. So I got all the stories of that, and being married to Shafiq, and we talk to Shafiq periodically, so we still keep in touch with him, even though we've been far away for so long. But Amani, and there's another dancer. I have another one. Her name is Margot Kalfayan, and she's Lebanese. Now, she's Waleed's cousin, first cousin. This one gives you chills, even in her street clothes. This woman is so amazing, and she won't come to America, and I could shoot her for that.
Yes.
But they're the ones that I consider the top throughout the world. Najwa Fawad was great. There's other people that I liked, and I'm glad I've seen them, but they're the ones that absolutely take the cake.
Awesome. And I believe you said you had some chance to also spend time with Amani. So what kind of relationship you had? I know you met her in person, you traveled there.
It's funny, I just answered an email from her today, because she's coming to this country in
Yes.
May of next year. But it just so happens I'm going to be in Palm Springs teaching the same weekend. And I committed to that 2 days before I knew she was coming. So I'm trying to find out where else she's going to be, etc. But I love Amani. Amani, I didn't realize when she asked me to teach in Lebanon, had been following me for 2 years. And I had no idea of that till she told me when I was there. And then she asked me if I would teach. So yes, of course I said yes. It was a wonderful chance. And it got Walid a chance to go back to Lebanon and see family and everything. So it was a wonderful trip. While we were there, of course, I spent a week with her in Beirut. She was the most gracious hostess, a lovely, lovely person. Not an ounce of fakeness about her. She's just wonderful. And the Friday before we went to the mountains, we went to her house. And I interviewed her. And we talked, and I really appreciate this woman and think she's wonderful. And she's a very dear friend at this point, and I'm very thankful for that. I add her to my list of other people I'm so thankful to know. Like Helena and Dolores, they're all very special people. Dahlia.
Yes. Morwenna, this is such an interesting conversation. So, as somebody who dedicated her whole life to Middle Eastern dance, as an Oriental dancer, as a teacher, what would be your advice for somebody who wants to dedicate professionally to Middle Eastern dance? Let's say initially performing, and then you can also talk about teaching. What would be your best advice?
I think every dancer needs to study the dance. They need to know the culture, the background, everything there is to know about it. I say everything. You will never know everything.
Yes.
I'm still learning day by day. But you have to find a teacher who knows the background of the dance, who is good at it, not necessarily a good performer, but is good at teaching it and sharing what she knows. There's nothing wrong with going from one teacher to another. Once you've learned all you can from this person, don't just stop there. Keep going. I do get a little irritated with people who take a workshop and think they've studied with somebody. Studying a workshop is just an opening. It's showing you what can be there. If you like what this person has to offer, then you find out where they are and maybe you study with them. I know people who run back and forth to Egypt all the time, and they don't really come back with anything. They're there for a week. They take from 10 people. They come back. They think they know everything. And what have they really absorbed? It's a lifelong study.
Yes.
And be open so that as you're performing days end, you have something else to go into.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're like a cheerleader. High school days are over. You're done. You don't want that. You really love this dance. You want to stay in it forever. And I think I've evolved now maybe 4 times. This is my last evolving year. This is actually the last shot I will have. And this one I will stay until the day I die. Because I've done the performing. I've done all the weekly teaching. I've done all of that. I've taught workshops. I never wanted to be on a workshop circuit because that's easy teaching. You come in, you teach, you give them the information, and you hope they get something. But when you're teaching weekly, and on weekly classes, you have a commitment to those people, and you better take them from A to Z or ever far you can. It can't just be regurgitating the same old things over and over again.
Yes.
I think teachers need to learn how to teach, and I usually recommend to a girl who wants to start teaching, before I even give them any instruction myself, go take a ballet class and see how a dance class is set up. Do that first. It's not just follow the bouncing butt. And that, and it's the same with performing. If you want to know how to perform, watch performers day in, day out. YouTube it. Be in the clubs. You still have clubs in Boston where dancers are there all the time. Most of the country doesn't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel that's a real shame because those dancers can't go and listen to the music and listen to the musicians and see somebody dance and see what they do wrong and see what they do right and learn from it. We had that, and that was a wonderful experience. I mean, I would every opportunity. Friday, Saturday, you could find me usually at the Continental in Asonet because the musicians were there. There was always dancers. Even if I wasn't performing there, I would be there somehow. Even if I was performing elsewhere, I'd break my neck to get home, to get to that restaurant, so I could at least be there for an hour or so. And I think we need more of that. So you guys in Boston and Rhode Island, you have it made today because it's not like that in the rest of the country.
Yeah. I think they're more lucky in Rhode Island these days. A lot of places in Boston not lasting, or the bands, like there's sometimes like a one-piece band. So we're not getting so lucky in Boston, exactly Boston. In Rhode Island, I think they have more chances.
Yeah, Rhode Island is good. Yeah, like, I don't know if you know Bashir El-Khoury, the keyboard player. Bashir, he plays in Rhode Island. He lives in Mass. He plays mostly in Rhode Island, but some in Massachusetts. He's working every weekend.
Yes.
He's our nephew. I'm amazed and relieved when he comes home. He says, I can't believe it. There's the one on one side of the street and one on the other.
Yeah, so we are talking about the live music, how important the live music is, and what I was talking a little bit off camera with Morwena before about how things have changed a little bit, and we wish really we were lucky to have all the wonderful musicians we have in the area more often. In Boston, I think in Rhode Island, I see weekly shows when some of our great musicians, like Mitch Kalsunas all the time, which is great. But in Boston area, it's a bit hard. I think business sometimes is hard to keep, and affording the band and the entertainment is probably an issue. But I think Morwena I would like you to tell us more about, the live music and your love for the live musicians.
Well, I think you still have good musicians in
we
Boston.
We do.
Mitchell's playing all the time. George Malou is singing all the time. So you've got good people. When I came back a few years ago, 2009, I believe it was, they all came down to Rhode Island to play. I was working with Kanina. And it was just such a thrill to be with the same musicians that I worked with back in my day. And they're still as good as they were. And, back in the 80s and possibly into the 90s, I'm trying to remember, they were the key musicians in the country. They were
No
doubt. Boston had music to die for. Then, when I moved to California, because you don't appreciate them when you have them, you take it for granted. But then when I went to California and realized there was nobody at all, it broke my heart to think I left Boston and left all that behind.
Yes.
There was nothing like went on in Boston at all. And I do think you have to be involved in the Lebanese community in Boston to be part of the Huffley scene and all of that. But that doesn't even happen elsewhere. The dancers aren't included in the Lebanese scene in San Diego. They're just the belly dancers. They're not brought into it at all, and that's tough.
Yes.
And your pay scale is still higher in Boston and Rhode Island than it is most places. San Diego, I think, is the lowest in the country. It's really bad down there, and they just fought to get a $5 raise. I mean, that was quite an experience. I was in the meeting involved in that, and when they started fighting over $5 and how a club owner wasn't going to give them a $5 raise, I thought, I'm in the wrong place. You know, and we would bring in, I don't know if you've ever heard of Fadi El Saadi. He lives in Mexico City. He's Lebanese. His music is absolutely wonderful. And he moved to Mexico City because there was nobody there. And he set everything up and revived the club there that the dancers used to dance in the 80s and 90s. Got it back. It's flourishing now. He's playing continuously with his band. And now I'm in Knoxville, and there are no bands. It's like, how do these people survive and keep their interest in the dance if you don't have live music?
Yes.
That, to me, was the epitome of performing. I mean, I'm not talking theater things or anything like that. That's another whole subject.
Yes.
But in the clubs,
In the
that
clubs.
was working with musicians and that's a high all in itself. You don't need anything else. You know, they were wonderful.
Yes.
And those guys are still there. I see Joey Kalungian still playing, Freddie
Yes.
Elias is still playing.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes, we do have a great deal of wonderful musicians. We are very
Yeah.
lucky. Yeah, I just wish we could see them in Boston area, Boston, central Boston, more often than
Yeah.
than they
Now,
we
is
do.
there still stuff going on at the Middle East restaurant?
The Middle East restaurant actually right now only has a live band event thanks to Sabeth.
Yeah.
Right now it's once every 2 months, only once.
Oh,
When I started, it used to be every Wednesday.
the music is not appreciated like it used to be. You know, that's why I've always felt I'm so lucky to have Waleed. You know, we together, and not because I was with him or because we both had something to offer to the audience that we would. So we do Zephyrs for weddings, and in San Diego, they think that they're doing the Zephyr. They have no idea what it really consists of, and so bring Lebanon into San Diego. That was the one thing Lebanon I had to research because I knew about Egyptian Zephyrs wedding, but I didn't really know what Lebanese do for Zephyrs. I thought I didn't really know. And we made friends with a guy who used to be a drummer for Marco Calfayan. He became our text in Lebanon. He took us everywhere. He was wonderful. And he took us to a wedding, and I videoed the whole wedding. And it was the most amazing experience because it is different than the Egyptian. And so I make sure that when we do Zephyrs that we bring that Lebanese influence.
Wonderful. I think it would be.
Where there's a difference between
Yes.
Lebanese and Egyptian.
I was just thinking that I hope it will remind myself when you teach in Boston. So it's going to be really great chance for everybody to not miss this when she's gonna come and spend 2 hours telling teach Lebanese Oriental. And I think I'm gonna try to remember, or please everybody to ask her if she could tell us the difference between the Zifa in Egyptian. A big Lebanese community here, so I presume many of the scene here is all Lebanese people doing their Lebanese functions and clubs and weddings. So
Right.
I would say that still working in those events, like would definitely be interested in all you have to teach us about what Lebanese people and style of dance, and for example how they do a Zifa differently. So we are looking forward. So everybody, thank you so much, Morwena. And
We had such difficulties getting online.
oh no, but we did it. Sorry about We had some technical issues, so we had to do the sound through the phone. But I want to remind everybody is going to be Morwena teaching us in Exactly, but it's pretty much Boston area. It's going to be the 22nd of November, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and she's going to teach with Walid, with her. He's going to be drumming live for the class. So we have two top of the persons here teaching us with a lifetime experience. So I hope you will know. I will put the link so you can register. And thank you so much more time.